Hey there, Hipsters. Happy Thursday. Today is going to be our last day of YouTube videos for the week. Tomorrow, you're just going to focus on getting those Lexia minutes, ST Math minutes, and Raz Kids books. And if you get all of those things done, then tomorrow you get Fun Friday, and you've earned yourself a break. So keep on logging in and getting all of your work done. I'm so proud of you guys. Keep it up. All right, Hipsters, today we're going to keep talking about key details. We're going to really focus on describing characters using those key details. We know that in order to describe a character, we need to pay attention to what that character thinks, says, does, and feels, and we can use key details to help us with that. I'm going to go back into Brave Irene. So yesterday we identified some key details in Brave Irene, but now I'm going to find the key details that are going to help me describe Irene. I know that Irene acts kindly to her mother by offering to deliver the dress when her mother gets sick. When she's in the snow, Irene yells at the wind. She's feeling really angry. But then after the wind blows her dress away, she's feeling sad and scared and alone. But even though she's feeling all of those things, she keeps going through the snow and ends up using the dress box as a sled, which is pretty creative. She keeps going, she doesn't give up, she makes it to the Duchess, and she delivers the dress. All of these details are super important to helping me really understand Irene. Based on these key details, I could describe her as kind, loving, determined, and brave. Okay, Hipsters, today we're going to finish reading Cinderella. We started it yesterday. We learned that Cinderella lives with her father, her stepmother, and her evil stepsisters who got invited to a ball, and Cinderella had to help them get ready, even though they were laughing at her. Cinderella was super upset. Then her fairy godmother helped create this coach and the horses by using her magic. And now Cinderella's headed to the ball. So all you have to do while we finish this book is just listen. Now, when the king's son learns that a grand princess, whom no one knew at all, had just arrived at the palace, he ran out to receive her. He offered her his hand as she alighted from the coach and led her into the ballroom, where all the company was assembled. Then a deep silence fell over the room. Everyone stopped dancing. The violins stopped playing. All eyes turned to the great beauty of this mysterious one. Only a low murmur rippled over the gathering. Oh, how beautiful she is. Remember, this is just Cinderella, who was just in rags a couple pages ago, but now her fairy godmother gave her this beautiful dress and everyone thinks she's a princess. The king himself, old as he was, could not take his eyes off her and whispered in a low voice to the queen that it had been a long time since he had seen anyone so charming and beautiful. The ladies were busy studying her headdress and her gown in order to have some made just like them the next day. If only they could find stuff as fine and workmanship as skillful. The young prince conducted Cinderella to the seat of greatest honor and then led her out on the floor to dance. She danced with so much grace that people wondered at her more than ever. A most splendid feast was served, but the prince did not taste a mouthful, so intent was he in gazing at Cinderella. Cinderella went to sit near her stepsisters and paid them 1,000 courtesies. She shared with them some oranges and lemons which the young prince had given her. The sisters were completely astonished. They did not recognize her at all. Suddenly, Cinderella heard the clock chime 11 hours and 3/4. She immediately made a deep curtsy to the company and hurried off as quickly as she could. When Cinderella got home, she went to look for her godmother and thanked her. Then she told her how she longed to go to the ball the following night. The prince had begged her to come. While she was telling her godmother everything that had happened at the ball, her two stepsisters knocked on the door. Cinderella ran to let them in. "How late you are," she said, yawning, rubbing her eyes and stretching as if she had just waked out of a sound sleep. While they were gone, she had had no wish to sleep. "If you had come to the ball," said one, "you would not have been bored, I can tell you. A most beautiful princess came, the most beautiful princess anyone could hope to see. She paid us 1,000 courtesies. She gave us oranges and lemons." So the stepsisters don't realize that they're just talking about Cinderella right now. They're telling Cinderella all about this beautiful princess, not knowing that it was actually her. Cinderella was delighted. What was the name of this princess? They answered, "No one knows. The king's son is desperate. He would give anything to know who she is." At this, Cinderella smiled and said softly, "She was then so beautiful? My goodness, how lucky you are. Would I could see her. Ah, Mademoiselle Javot, lend me your yellow outfit that you wear for every day." "Really," said Javot, "I like that. Lend my clothes to a filthy cinder seat like you? I should be mad." Cinderella expected this snub. She was secretly relieved, for what would she have done if her sister had been willing to lend her her dress? The next night, the two sisters were off again to the ball, and so was Cinderella, but this time even more splendidly dressed than before. The prince never left her side. All evening he paid her charming compliments. The young miss found this so far from boring that she forgot her godmother's warning. She was horrified to hear the first stroke of midnight before she thought it could be 11 o'clock. She rose and fled as lightly as a doe. The prince followed her, but he could not overtake her. In her haste, Cinderella dropped one of her glass slippers. The prince gathered it up with the greatest care. Cinderella reached home all out of breath, with neither coach nor footman, and in rags. Nothing was left of her finery but one little slipper, the mate to the one she had lost. The guards at the palace gate were questioned. Had they seen a princess leave? No, they had seen no one but a young woman in rags, and she looked more like a peasant girl than a fine young lady. When the two sisters returned from the ball, Cinderella asked them if they had enjoyed themselves again, and if the beautiful lady had been there. They told her, oh yes, she was there, but at the stroke of midnight she fled from the palace. She dropped one of her little glass slippers, the prettiest in the world. The king's son found it, and he did nothing but gaze at it all during the rest of the ball. He certainly has fallen head over heels in love with the owner of the slipper. They spoke truly. For a few days after the ball, the king's son had his herald sound throughout the land that he would marry her whose foot would fit the little slipper. First they tried it on princesses, then on duchesses, and all the ladies of the court, but it was no use. So here, remember, she had to leave by midnight or else the magic was going to end. So when she ran out, once it turned midnight, she dropped a slipper, the prince found it, and now he has to figure out whose slipper it is. Whose foot does the slipper fit? They brought it to the two sisters, who did their best to force their feet into the little slipper, but they could not. Cinderella was looking on and recognized her slipper. So she laughingly said, "Let me see if it would fit me." Her stepsisters burst into shrieks of laughter. Thither, oh, fit a cinder seat! How they mocked her. But the gentleman who had been sent to try on the slipper looked intently at Cinderella. Finding her beautiful, he said it was no more than right. He had been ordered to try it on all the young ladies. He had Cinderella sit down, and sliding the slipper on her little foot, he saw that it fit her perfectly, just as if it had been made of wax. The astonishment of her sisters was great, but greater still when Cinderella drew from her pocket the little slipper, which she slipped on her other foot. Then suddenly her godmother appeared. Touching Cinderella's rags with her wand, she changed them into a costume still more magnificent than any she had worn before. Now her stepsisters recognized her. Cinderella was the beautiful personage they had seen at the ball. They threw themselves at her feet and begged forgiveness for all their bad treatment of her. Cinderella asked them to rise, embraced them, and told them she forgave them with all her heart. She begged them to love her always. Cinderella was conducted to the young prince, dressed as she was. He found her lovelier than ever, and a few days afterwards married her. Cinderella, who was as good as she was beautiful, gave her sisters a home at the palace, and on the same day married them to 2 great lords of the court. The end. Ooh, all right. Hipsters, thank you so much for finishing Cinderella with me. There were a lot of different characters we could describe in this story, but I want to focus today on describing the stepsisters. We're going to go back to a page from yesterday. I'm going to reread it. You're listening for what the stepsisters are thinking, saying, doing, and feeling, so that we can describe them using key details. They sent for the best hairdresser to pile their curls into 2 horns. None but the best beauty patches would do. They called in Cinderella to ask her advice, for she had very good taste in these matters. Cinderella gave them the best advice in the world and even offered to dress their hair, which of course was what they really wanted in the first place. While she was working over them, they would say to her, "Cinderella, now wouldn't you just like to go to the ball?" "Oh, you are making fun of me. A ball is not for such as I." "You are right, cinder seat at a ball. How people would laugh." And they laughed themselves at the very thought. Someone else would have made nests at their heads, but not Cinderella. She was good. She dressed them perfectly. The 2 sisters were in such a twitter of excitement that for 2 days they hardly took time to eat. They strained and snapped a dozen corset strings, pulling them too tight in order to shrink their waists. All day long they paraded in front of the looking glass. Okay, so Hipsters, what do the stepsisters say on this page? What do they say? Yeah, they're basically making fun of Cinderella. They say, "Cinderella, now wouldn't you just like to go to a ball? Cinder seat at a ball, how people would laugh." So they're making fun of her. And what do they do on this page? Yeah, they do a lot of different things to get ready. They get their hair done. They're looking at themselves in the mirror constantly. They're pulling their dresses as tight as they'll go so that they look their best. And what else do they do? What do they do to Cinderella on this page? Yeah, they laugh at her. In this picture, we can tell Cinderella is working so hard to help them get ready, and they're just smiling and laughing at her while she's doing all of the work. So put all of that together, Hipsters. What words would you use to describe the stepsisters? Yeah, those were some good words. I would describe them as mean and pretty selfish, right? They're only thinking of themselves and not about how hard they're making Cinderella work. Now, on the contrary, right, we can compare that with how Cinderella is acting on this page. So what does she do, even though the stepsisters are making fun of her? What does she do? Yeah, she still helps them get ready. Even though they're being mean, they ask for her help and she's helping them. So how would you describe Cinderella on this page? Yeah, I heard a lot of really good words. She's kind, she's helpful, she's loving, she's caring. Even though they're being so mean and selfish, she is still showing what a good person she is by helping them anyway. Wow. Nice job, Hipsters. Thank you for helping me describe characters in this book with key details. Now it's your turn. Choose someone you know really well. It could be a teacher, a friend, a parent, or even yourself. I want you to describe them using some key details that you know about them, some key pieces of information about them. Text your description to your teacher so they can see how much awesome work you're doing. All right, Hipsters, keep getting those minutes on Lexia, SC Math, and Raz Kids, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye.